as much as possible as well. I would just like to make you aware that we are recording this session just so that we can promote it to people who weren't able to make it along today with yourself. So if you don't want to be recorded, that's completely fine. Just pop yourself off the camera and that's not a problem at all. So if you do have any questions that spring to mind throughout when our presenters are talking, please feel free to just pop them in the chat box and we'll come to them at the end when we have our Q&A session. So I would now just like to hand over to Susan Davies from TSI Murray, who will just provide you with a quick overview on why it is important to invest in our Murray young people. So Susan, over to you.
Thanks, Amy. Thank you everyone for coming this afternoon, and thank you for providing the motivation for me to put on lipstick again for the second time this week. It's still home working. So thank you seriously for all being here today. I'm just wondering where you guys are at in terms of your knowledge about Community Jobs Scotland. And I'm just wondering if we could just use the chat just for a second to see, like, if 0 is like your knowledge, right? You don't know anything about it, or 5, you've been an employer, you got it, you know it. I'm just wondering if you could just put that in the chat right now. How many 0s, 1s? I'm feeling like I'm a 3.5. And I'm just interested in knowing where you guys are at. Is that okay? I'm going to just, oh, Amy, you're in a 3.5, yes. If 0, yeah, great, 2s, excellent. I know we've got a 5 in here somewhere.
I think you should maybe be a 5, Lee.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah. Oh, Lee, you're 4-ish. You're 5-ish. Okay, good. So, okay, I can get a sense that, you know, so there's Reap, hello, Reap, hi, 1s, 3s. So we've got a bit of a variation. So some of this might be new to a lot of you. So that's good to know. Good stuff. Great. Okay, so there's lots of time for questions and answers too, right, Michael? So we're good with that, yeah? So, okay, fantastic. Yeah, as Amy said, my name is Sue Davies. I work at TSI Murray. And for the last 5 years, I've been on a lot of employment forums, groups, pipelines, meetings, and I've also had the opportunity of listening to and working with young people. And in a previous job, I used to run self-advocacy groups for young people in Glasgow. And we engaged peer support to help the voices that were the marginalized to be amplified. So young people have been part of my working life for a very long time. And I would guess, you know, I would say that there's really a couple of things that I've learned about that, about young people. And the number one thing is that young people value work. Despite what, you know, might be out there and media and negative and some shade, actually, it's really the opposite. Young people value work. And I think the other thing that I learned is that, you know, money is important, but it's not the big motivator. It's not like chasing big money is what young people want to do. They actually want to make a difference. They want to learn and do what we do, but they just don't know how to get here. And that's why Community Jobs Scotland is such a fantastic bridge, because it allows young people to come into a growing sector of employment, the third sector. So I'm really happy that this bridge is being built really solidly in Murray with the help of Amy in developing the young workforce as well. So we know that, wow, the job figures are not good locally. I mean, ever since last year, I could see that the impact of the COVID-19 and the pandemic is just huge rates of increase in youth employment. And so this is going to have a really huge impact on young people. And learning the skills, young people will need to have, you know, their opportunity to learn skills, but also to get onto the job market. So Community Jobs Scotland is a really excellent way of young people to be doing this. So, yeah, sorry, Amy? No, we're all good. So I guess one of the things that, young people still need to develop their skills, whether it's organizational, time management, communication skills, learning how to accept guidance, all of that kind of stuff. We're not ready-made packages. And I think what Community Jobs Scotland allows for that kind of skill building to happen. And young people have learned skills traditionally in the third sector, largely through volunteering. But what we know is that if skills are to be learned, it needs to be continuous practice. And the incentive to practice skills is often highest when work is paid. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. The other thing is that the time between 18 and 25, that's when young people are forming a critical time of their societal views. And this is the time that we have the opportunity to be with young people and to help shape the change that we want to make happen. So I would say that there's lots of benefits to employing a young person, but two that really strike me, and particularly so why it's so wonderful with Community Jobs Scotland, is number one, it's improving your workforce diversity and providing, different perspectives, having different skills, having different insight and values in your organization. And I think the other really big benefit is giving your existing employees a chance to grow, to be with young people and to train, mentor them. And we know that that can help build a really positive and strong organizational culture. And we know that team working is actually enhanced when we have a mix of young employees and older employees. So I would say those are the two things that I can really see that are the deeper, like longer term kind of benefits. Because I think that's the thing, the benefits might not be immediate, but it's what you can receive in the longer term, being flexible organizations, flexible businesses, being forward thinking, having a strong organizational culture. That's what employing a young person through Community Jobs Scotland can do. So so without further ado, that's just a little bit of the context there for me. I'm going to pass it over to the guy from Community Jobs Scotland. That's Michael, and he can delve in further about what exactly you need to do if you want to employ a younger person. So over to you, Michael.
Thanks very much, Susan, and thanks for the introduction, the guy. Unlike Susan, I didn't get lipstick on this morning. However, what I would say, I would echo a lot of what Susan says about the values of employing and working with a young person. Susan spoke quite well about why young people want to work and the benefits of work, etc. And something just sprung to mind with me when she was speaking about it's not always money that's the main thing. And I'll just go back to bumping into a young person in Glasgow about 6 years ago. We started doing a lot of work and working with people getting released from custody. And I remember one day bumping into a young woman who comes from probably one of the most notorious families in Glasgow. And she was actually quite notorious herself. And I met her coming along the road one wet autumn day. And I thought, and she had a smile from ear to ear. And I turned around and said to her, what have you got so bloody happy to be smiling about? And she turned around and she said to me, I've just paid my council tax for the first time ever. And that's the impact, getting the support of different agencies and getting a job made for that young woman. And it's always one thing that will stick with me, because she could have been a very rich woman staying in the lifestyle she was in the family she was in. Okay, she might have been in and out of custody, but she had everything that we probably all dream of, but maybe not the way we want to dream of earning it. And a couple of years later, I bumped into her one day when she was supporting somebody with a learning disability. And I couldn't believe how natural she was in her job, coming from that background. I think, wow, people that think they know how to support people and pontificate about, oh, this is what you do with somebody with a learning disability, they would have had a lot to learn from how that young woman and another woman who had been aware of it had left custody done the exact same. So yes, there's a lot of values, and there's a lot of things, and we do work with a lot of vulnerable young people. I don't call them vulnerable, I call them valuable, because they are very valuable. And what happens in Murray and happens in Glasgow and happens throughout Scotland, there are a lot of young people who maybe have a barrier that they don't deserve put in front of them. It may be a disability, it may be a health issue, it may be the fact that they've got a conviction, it may be the fact that they have had to care for somebody that prevents them from getting a job, to being in care, to maybe not having the best experience of education. Community Jobs Scotland is a good out for them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Amy to show a video that was pre-lockdown, but what it will do is it will give you a feel for what Community Jobs Scotland is and the impact it has on society. So if you want to show the video, Amy, that would be great.
Yeah, of course, I'll just go find it just now. Here we go. Sorry, my screen's just loading up here.
I found out about this Community Jobs Scotland funded roles in my local job centre. My work coach and I had a discussion and we both came to the agreement that it would be an excellent opportunity for myself. So I found it really interesting because it's something that I've never done before. You're working with the skilled kids and working with my work colleagues. I've not been working for a while, so getting back into a routine has benefited me a lot. And what I hope to be in the foreseeable future, because I thoroughly enjoyed working with the skilled kids and just enjoyed coming into work every day.
I was into my sports like boxing, American football, and it all went downhill since I lost two role models in my life, which was my dad and my granddad. That's when I started drinking, taking drugs and hanging around with the wrong crowd. Went out of jail, and that's where I got community service, and that's where I found out through Apex was. So I came down here, completed my hours, and that's when CGS and SCVO gave me a job, offered me a 25-hour contract, which is thanks to them. And my role here at Apex is I'm in charge of the PP and I maintain the gardening equipment like streamers and lawnmowers, and hopefully this role will keep me out of trouble and I can help people like myself, and thanks to Apex for giving me the chance to be a better person, and all thanks to CGS.
My name's Kelly and I have just recently got myself a job at Apex in Stranraer. Basically, before I applied for the job, I had never really had a job before in my life. Never had an interview. Basically, I was a single mum, bringing up my 5-year-old son. If someone was to have told me that I would be here today in a job that I love with people who I know will be lifelong friends, then I would never have believed them.
Hi, my name's Cohen. I'm a museum assistant at Auckland Township. I'm from Inverary. So I started a 1 week's work placement through the high school up in Kilphead. They offered me a CGS contract for 6 months. I love it. It's the best opportunity I've had in a long time. It's been beneficial because I've learned a lot more skills than I would have anywhere else. And the skills that I've learned are ones that I can take on.
So my name is Roland Den. I'm working with Community Renewal through CGS since December last year. Looking at the fact that I moved to the UK and I first came to the UK 3 years ago, I had no idea how the system works. up until I started working with this. So now I'm much more confident myself personally, and I'm much more confident in giving advice to others who are in the same shoes as I was when I came to the UK.
I started working for community renewal since December 2018 as a community facilitator. We do some development like organizing events as well as helping people from the community. So we have like drop-ins every day with any sorts of issues. My dream was always to become an accountant, but I didn't get a chance to finish college. So this was a really good opportunity for me because I learned how to do petty cash, organizing events, budgets, and all sorts of things.
My name's Leon Buska, and I've worked here through CGS for about a year now. I've been in so many youth training programs around Glasgow, and I'm in college now studying English literacy. And I think I'm better at public speaking because I haven't had the courage to stand up and talk in front of people, but I do now.
So my name is Connor Alan McGowan. I am the trainee youth worker at Davies, and I'm from Glasgow. I was involved with youth for quite some time. The job offer came through for the trainee youth worker, which I thought was a great step forward in progressing. I work within the junior and senior club, which is like a drop-in. So it's like an after-school club, but also just you can drop in and there's a lot of activities on. I mainly run the music sessions, which I usually work with various instruments like guitar or drums or bass guitar, just any instrument that comes across, and I'll try and teach them as best I can. I also do songwriting too, which helps young people open up and be creative about it as well. Yeah, I enjoy it thoroughly because I've always been passionate about youth work. I've been working with youth work organisations for 4 years now, both volunteering and paid, and I'm very passionate about it and I enjoy it.
Hi, I'm Chloe. I work for Glasgow North West Citizens Advice Bureau. I've been working here for over a year and a half now. I got this job through CGS programme. I started as a part-time admin working 25 hours underneath the lead receptionist. Been off work for a year previous due to my health condition, which I only found out I had when I was 21. So it was a bit of a shock. Before then I was in full-time employment, so once I had been off for a year and I was really struggling to get back into work, as soon as I found the CGS programme, it was really good to go into a workplace where they already understood that I had a health condition. Now I work for Glasgow North West Citizens Advice full time. I'm now the lead receptionist. I now have someone who I look after full time as well. I'm really pleased that I came through the CGS programme, and I would totally advise anyone who is not in employment just now to have a wee look into it and go for it.
So I became a CGS employee. First I started volunteering, but before that I was unemployed for quite a while, about a year and a half. I got injured while in the forces and got medically discharged. So I struggled to find work because it was difficult to find something I could do. I came across the volunteer role and straight away I applied for it. I came in for an interview with Anne, and she actually let me start the same week on the Friday. I'm really glad that CGS is actually a thing to help disabled people get back into work, because it is really a struggle for me specifically. It was a struggle to get back into work, and if it wasn't for CGS I would be sitting in the house right now doing nothing. So yeah, I would really recommend it.
When I was 18, I was diagnosed with a condition that made it hard for me to find and stay in employment. Through Community Jobs Scotland, I was able to find a position that enabled me to develop in a working environment while maintaining my own personal health problems. As an administrator at SSF, I have a number of responsibilities, including answering phones and emails, working on spreadsheets and maintaining databases. As well as that, I help out with events that take place over the year. Scottish Sports Futures are helping me develop both personally and professionally, and I have Community Jobs Scotland to thank for that.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. I'm a reception assistant at Hooker Scotland. I think it's definitely given me more confidence. It's given me time to learn, which is really important. It's given me like the space to make mistakes, kind of pull myself in together. I've just turned 18, so speaking with people here and just getting a bit of understanding of things that I'm meant to be doing in and out of work. So it's just really kind of making me grow into being an adult. For me, why Community Jobs Scotland jobs are important is not a lot of children have qualifications or opportunities to get into work, or even an opportunity to have a stepping stone to be able to then apply for jobs. I feel like this really gives you the opportunity to build up your CV, build up references, just build up experience enough to be able to move on from here and do good for yourself.
I think hopefully that will give you an idea of what we work with and what we do in Community Jobs Scotland. Unfortunately, that was probably only about a dozen young people out of the 9,500 young people we have worked with. And the key to that is the employers that we work with. I noticed TSI Murray only give themselves 3.5 out of 5, and Reboot only give themselves 4-ish. You must be very modest in Murray, because I would have to say the support we've got from TSI and Community Jobs Scotland has been excellent. I would have to say without Lee and Reboot in Murray, we would be lost. So I don't think I need to sell what we do. I think all you need to do is talk to both individuals about how Reboot in particular has benefited from Community Jobs Scotland. The stories that you heard from the young people there, albeit mainly in the south of Scotland and the central belt, are no different than the stories in the north of Scotland. You had rural areas there as well, which was quite good. I noticed we've got Elgin Football Club attending today. We work very closely with the SPFL, and we've got an amazing amount of football clubs, from the biggest clubs in Scotland, probably 2 of the biggest clubs in the world, to small junior clubs engaged in Community Jobs Scotland. But they're all on a par when it comes to what they do for young people. So yes, Murray, we've got organisations in Murray that engage with us. We could be doing with more, and you know your young people. And I believe the fact that you've signed up today shows that you want to engage with the young people that you work with or you're aware of. So I've got a small presentation here that Amy's going to show for us. I'll go through it because there are a lot of questions. I think you all know who I am by now, so we'll just move on with the presentation. But I would like to thank Amy and DYW and the TSA for the support in delivering this. I always feel that when I do things that I'm not very good IT wise, but when I go to Murray, I've done a couple of things. Amy just runs it for me, so thank you, Amy. What is Community Jobs Scotland? Basically, Community Jobs Scotland is a programme funded by Scottish Government. It's a £5 million scheme that Scottish Government have given us for phase 11 of Community Jobs Scotland. And it's aimed at, and I'll say this, but I'll correct myself afterwards, it's aimed at 16 to 29-year-olds from vulnerable groups. But I think you saw on the video that there are a lot of valuable groups there, a lot of valuable young people. The goalposts have slightly changed in Community Jobs Scotland because of the Young Person Guarantee and what will happen after March next year or the 1st of April. But we are offering a 26 or 40-week fixed-term contract for a young person with organisations like yourselves. The jobs can be 16 hours or at least 25 hours a week. The reason that they're 25 hours a week is because legislatively that is classed as a full-time job. But we also realise a lot of young people that maybe 16 hours a week suits, but more importantly, as an employer, 16 hours a week is maybe what you would benefit from. We used to only have the 16 hours a week for young people with disability and health issues, but we realised lone parents, etc., could benefit from the 16 hours a week. And the real reason behind Community Jobs Scotland is it's to develop the core skills for a young person to sustain employment, to make sure 26 weeks or 40 weeks down the line, they've got the skills to stay in work and to move forward. And it's probably more important now than ever due to the pandemic that young people get that opportunity and get that support. We will only work with organisations that can create a job that's a new role, so the jobs need to be additional. We also ask that the job has got community benefit, but no matter who you are in the third sector, you are delivering community benefits, so we can support you in identifying why you need that job. Young people need to be unemployed. That is the key criteria. You can't come along if you are already in work. So you need to be unemployed. And unfortunately, if you've been on Community Jobs Scotland before, unless it was last year, we can't give you an opportunity again. You can only be referred from 2 agencies, and that's basically government criteria to make sure that they're ensuring that it's only the right people that apply for it. And that's Skills Development Scotland and DWP, who can refer people. The groups, as Amy's going to show the next slide, will show you who we tend to work with. And as I said, it's mainly care leavers or care experienced, carers, military service and early leavers, person with a disability or health convictions, and person with a criminal conviction. And you did see that on the video. That's who were the young people that we showed. However, we do have other criteria, and you would saw some groups from other groups, i.e. refugees or asylum seekers that had permission to work, lone parents, whatever, people with no to low qualifications. But SDS and DWP will approach us with young people who they believe should get an opportunity. And it could be long-term unemployed or whatever, and we're more than happy to support that, because we're not here to prevent young people getting a job. We're here to promote it. And I suppose before we move on to the next slide, it's something that I would always say is that as employers, when you recruit somebody, it's a huge risk and you don't know what you're getting. But at least in Community Jobs Scotland, you do know what you're getting, because they have to tick a box. So somebody's not going to come in and tell you a lie because they've ticked the box to say, I've got epilepsy, I've got a criminal conviction, I've got childcare issues, I have been in care before. So you're getting a wee bit of an understanding of the young person that you're getting. So nothing's going to shock you. Whereas sometimes as an employer, you recruit somebody and you go, how did I give that person a job? Or at least what you're getting is written in the tin. So if you want to move on, Amy, to the next slide. It's not all about the money. However, Community Jobs Scotland does attract a good financial package for employers. And I'm only going to show you one slide because you can amend it to the 25 weeks or whatever. And I will share the link for the wage calculator. But basically, when you look at that, and I'll go to the balance at the end, because if you're an accountant or finance manager and you're here today, that's where you're going to go. Which in some ways is good. I'm going to have to admit somebody here, so I might take a wee bit of time. Which is some way good. Because what you will see is that if you, as a Community Jobs Scotland employer, recruit a young person between 16 to 29 who we have got you on a plate and you think you can work with, you're going to make money out of it. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because the money thing doesn't really appeal to me, but you will have a surplus unless you happen to recruit somebody that's over 23 and you're not paying the living wage. You will have a small deficit, but for 26 weeks, or sorry, for 40 weeks, we only have to find a tenner a week to employ them. But the rest of it, you've got a considerable balance, and that balance stays with you, and it's been used for support, supervision, whatever. It's not that we bring that back because you haven't paid that to the young person. It's a grant that we give you. It's a grant that is the same for everybody. However, sometimes you will find that after you've paid the wages and the national insurance contribution, you're left with a surplus. You keep that surplus because of the work that you're doing supporting the young person. And on the next slide, we'll talk a wee bit about how we work our programme. We always had jobs for 52 weeks, but unfortunately, because of the changing climate and the landscape of employability changing, we have to finish all our jobs by the 31st of March this year. So, or next year. So we are looking at offering a 40-week fixed-term contract for employers who can start a young person by the 25th of June. If it happens after the 25th of June and before the 30th of September, it would only be for 26 weeks. And as I say, the jobs are aimed at the furthest from the labour market, but my view is that you could get a rough diamond there, and that's where you can mould a young person. And there's two things when I'm speaking to young people I always say. An employer only wants two things from an employee. One, to be in time and always in work. And secondly, do as they're told. And that's the same for everybody in this meeting. Because if you turn around and say, oh, that's rubbish, that's what we all do. We get their work, we're on time, we're not off, and we do as we're told. We do as we're told. And that lets the employer mould us into what we want to do. And that's basic, that's life. If you register as a Community Jobs Scotland employer, what happens is that we assess your registration, and basically all we do, I love that, Susan. All we do is, because neither do I, we ask you to say who you are, what you do, where your policies and procedures are, give us a contract of employment you were offered a member of staff, and your employer's liability certificate. We would then check that you're a bona fide organisation, and then we would let you create jobs. And then when you create the jobs, we would assess the jobs. And it's basically, would I do that job? And would I have a proper job description, a proper induction, support and supervision, training, and will I be in a job or be better equipped to get a job at the end? And we would be shaming ourselves as employers if we couldn't turn around and fill that, quick that template in. Then we would award you the job or our jobs. You're probably talking maximum 5 jobs to an employer. Sometimes if you're very good, you get a wee bit more, but generally the maximum we would look at is 5. Average is probably 2 jobs per employer. And from it going, you apply in, if everything runs well, your job could be advertised in 4 weeks. There's a small budget also available to train young people. So the young person has access to a training pot, and it could be more than £200. It could be, say, for example, that you need to put somebody through a forklift course that's 240. We would pay for it, and we paid for some extreme courses that young people wanted to do because it was going to help them get a job. And that was one thing that springs to mind is a young woman applied to do a wedding planning course, and we paid for that. You also would have an account manager within SCVO who would support you the whole way through the process. The other thing I would say before we move on to the next slide is that if you recruited a young person, once they started, we would pay you an upfront payment So really the only time you would be behind financially is probably the last 6 weeks, where we don't pay you as much money, but hold back so we get a leaver report, etc. What I would say to you that it's very, very, very key that you have the capacity to support a young person. But again, in any job, you always have to support a member of staff. You have to make sure that the post's additional, that you're not displacing a member of staff to create this post. An induction and support and supervision is given. And finally, and this is probably key to me, that a monthly review needs to be carried out and recorded. And I think that's good practice, but particularly when you're working with young people. If you have a monthly review with a young person and you're saying your timekeeping, your attendance, your work is brilliant, month 1 and month 2, and then month 3, you're saying, no, it's crap, we're getting rid of you. As an employer, you have a responsibility to any member of staff to ensure, well, why has it went bad? Has it been a problem? Has it been some of the issues that they came to you with? Or is it just you've taken a dislike to that young person? Or there's been a change of supervisor and they don't want somebody that's got a learning disability in the job, because it doesn't look good for the organisation, because these things happen. But the good thing about the monthly review is that will support the young person. But likewise, if you're saying at month 1, John or Jennifer needs to improve their timekeeping, or they need to be able to do better at their job, and this is a plan of action we've taken, at least at month 2, you can say, not interested in improving it. So you've got evidence that you're supporting the young person, but they're not doing their bit. But a young person won't have any comeback then. But also, if you do put an action plan in place for a young person disabled, what can we do to make sure that you do get the working time? A young person will appreciate that. There'll be everybody else will probably swing it a wee bit in their favour, but at least you're giving them the benefit of the doubt. But you're also able to say, you wrote and you signed that you would try X, Y, and Z, and it hasn't happened. So unfortunately, we're going to have to look at our procedures and our policies or whatever. But generally what you do find is, if you are carrying out these monthly reviews properly, there won't be an issue. And the next slide is basically the link for Community Jobs Scotland, and Amy's got the slides now, so she'll share them with you. And it is a worthwhile programme. I noticed there's been a couple of questions come in. We'll answer them. Amy's had questions pre the event as well, so we'll move on to them as well. And finally, I'd just like to say thank you for attending and listening to me. So if you want to move on to the questions, Amy.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for that, Michael, and thanks, Susan. That was a really great overview on just exactly how it works and what funding is available, and importantly, why you get involved as well, and the impact it'll have on the young person. So thank you for that. I just look at the chat box. So we've got one question here. Let me read. Yes, so we've got one from Dave asking, can this be linked up to an apprenticeship? So can they access the funding and then do an apprenticeship aside of it?
Unfortunately not, because it's from the same pot of money that the Scottish Government hold. But what you can do is you can post Community Jobs Scotland, do an MA, or prior to Community Jobs Scotland, do an MA, but not at the same time.
Perfect, thank you for that. We've got one from Debbie saying, can this work with Mary, and can it be used? Oh, sorry, it just went up. Can this work with Mary, and can it be used if you have a young person already in mind for a job?
Unfortunately, it can't, but what we are doing, and we're doing it with several of the local authorities, is, and I think Murray might be one of them, is that young people that have completed Community Jobs Scotland, they're accessing Mary to extend their job. So after they've done their CGS, work contract, if the employer maybe just can't offer them that funding, we're using that in different local authority areas where their employment recruitment incentive kicks in to support that employer and the young person.
Perfect. Thank you for that. In terms of if they have a young person already in mind, can they apply for Community Jobs Scotland fund to support that person they have in mind?
Definitely, as long as they meet the criteria, and because youth unemployment legally it's got a wee bit more freedom when it comes to recruitment. We actually support and advocate that, because if you're working with a young person and that young person's committed to working with a voluntary organisation and they meet the eligibility criteria, that young person would benefit 99 times out of 100 working with that employer. So we would promote that.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Michael. Another one here is there a template for the necessary policies to employ?
Basically, on the registration form, we ask if you've got a health and safety policy, an equal opportunities policy, a grievance policy, unfortunately a dismissal policy, and a data protection policy. We don't hold you to all them if you don't have them, but what we need is if you have them, you let us know and when you last updated them, but maybe in your terms and conditions of contract, you cover that area as well. But we would work with you and support you in that.
Perfect. Thank you, Michael. Do you have to create a unique vacancy, or can it be used, or can you use this to recruit? Or sorry, let me rephrase that. Do you have to create a unique vacancy, or can you use this to recruit for a vacant post?
If you're creating for a vacant post already, that's not additional. So we would say no. Like if you're going to the labour market because you need an admin officer, you can't use Community Jobs Scotland for it. But what you can do is you can look at creating an admin post to support an already existing admin post, because you've maybe got a member of staff that's an admin supervisor who could be doing other work. Community Jobs Scotland could come in and learn from that person and pick up some of the tasks and roles.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Michael. Another question that's came in here is this linked to support around technology equipment? And is there any reason jobs can be working from home?
I wasn't a big advocate of home working, but unfortunately things have changed now. So we're going to have to be realistic and say that home working would be an option, but there would need to be a lot of support, supervision, how it's managed, how it's controlled. And that's what we would dig into, because you have to remember as you're working with a young person that's never been in the workplace before. And I remember the days I was a young person, never in the workplace. Could you imagine me? Like, I dog school for a living. So if I was at home working and I was young, I'd probably never be doing my work. So we do look at why they're working from home and the support that they need to have in place and how it's monitored, etc. Around the support around technology and equipment, unlike the Kickstart programme, there isn't a wraparound support with the same volume of money, but then you've got that surplus if you're involved in Community Jobs Scotland, where we do promote the living wage as well, that you could use that excess money to buy equipment, etc. for a young person. And there's also the training money.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Michael. Just got a question here. It's wondering if the scheme is going to be extended after the 31st of March next year.
Now, that's a big question. The Scottish Government are looking at a more local delivery. So how that will impact an SCVO, we don't know. How it will impact in the third sector, we don't know. And how it will impact in local authorities, we don't know. There's been a lot of talk, not so much this year, because I think there's a better understanding of what we all do in this last year, and a lot better networking and support out there. I personally think that we will see a more localised delivery, which I can't complain about. I'd be a hypocrite if I did complain about. So it will continue in some shape, form or fashion but how it's delivered, I don't know. But I suggest it may be a local delivery model, which can be good. However, we've got a lot of expertise in delivering stuff, so we're probably saying, oh, we can do this, but we'll wait and see. But I do think nationally some things are best left in national delivery, but that's a question that we honestly don't know. But it won't be the be-all and the end-all if it's not a national programme and is local, as long as whoever is delivering it ensure that if it's local authority, it's going to the right people, or whether it's a smaller TSI or whatever doing it, that they have that support to deliver it.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Michael. Another question that's just came in. How long does it take to sign up? I have a young person waiting to start and have been successful with Mary, but can use it afterwards, but don't want to delay him much longer.
Basically, if an organisation signs up, does the registration and it comes in and it's perfect, it'll be turned around in a couple of days. Then they would create the job and that can be turned around. We say 4 weeks, it can be a matter of 2 weeks, a week, and get it advertised. However, that depends on the information that the employer is providing to us.
Perfect. Thanks, Michael. I'll just go over, if anyone's, just feel free to keep popping in questions. I'll just have a look at the ones that we got through prior to the event, just 2 seconds. One here is, why could it be better for us to employ a young person through the scheme than just go through normal recruitment? I can touch base on this one, Michael, and you can jump in as well. But I think just purely, you're going to be giving a young person a chance that you might not have considered before through the scheme. And I also just think, I mean, like Michael said, it's not all about the money, but if you're looking to recruit anyway, and you're going to get access to this funding scheme, in my eyes, it's a no-brainer to go with the money sort of option and access that money that way. And I think it's a slightly more rewarding one as well, just based on the young people that you will be really shaping their lives and making them change for the better. And I think that'll be a nice thing to have. I'm not sure if there's anything else, Michael, you want to touch on?
There's probably 3 things that I would touch on. The fact is also that you've recruited a young person, but you've also got support from an account manager and SCVO. There's also the fact that the referral agency, and particularly SDS, DWP are very good as well. I'm an advocate of DWP, but you've got an advisor there that maybe knows a young person that'll keep in contact with them. So you're getting those levels of support from external agencies. Also, I'd mentioned the training pot that a young person can access. One of the big things at the minute is mental health issues. And what we've been doing is we've been offering employers free courses on managing mental health in the workplace. So as an employer, you can access various free training from ourselves that may support you directly to support that young person from CGS, but also your other colleagues and other members of staff. So that's what I would suggest, that why CGS is a good option.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Michael. Just got a few more coming in the chat box here. We've got one from Debbie wondering if you need to advertise the position if you already have a young person in mind.
Again, unfortunately, we would have to put it onto the system. But what you would have to make sure is, if you have a young person in mind, SDS or DWP would have to give the eligibility form. But what we could do to you is, when you're speaking to your account manager, when your job's approved, our account manager would contact you to go through rate of pay, hours, etc., etc. You could turn around and say, I've got a young person, and what the account manager would tell you is, well, get the eligibility form from SDS and DWP, and we won't advertise it widely.
Perfect, thanks for that. And just confirming, the maximum number of young people you can employ through this team is 5, but they would recommend the average is roughly 2.
Yeah, basically, Lee will turn around and say, Lee probably gets 6 or 7 young people because we don't have the same demand in Murray. Some of our national organisations like Bernardo's, Salvation Army, Access, or Action for Children get the same numbers. most employers get 1, and that's where the average of 2 was coming when we divide it all up. But we really look at who you are as an organisation and what support and supervision you get. It isn't a bums on seats programme, and that's why it's worked. That's why more than 2 out of 3 young people after their CGS either stay with their employer or get another job. So we do look at what support and what your capacity is.
Michael, just a question here from Andrew, because it kind of leads nicely talking about support. He asked if what expectations are there on time set out to supervise Community Scotland job employees at the start of the positions if we want to support them to work in a role that has some level of autonomy. So, you know, there's a balance there. So what would you say?
I'll be honest with you, I don't think it's any different than any other member of staff. But what we do ask for is that you give a very detailed induction to a young person, that they sign off, that they know what they're coming into, that they know what their roles and responsibilities are. So at the outset, to me, it's like laying down the ground rules as you would to any member of staff. But what we do ask for additionally is that you carry out a monthly review and you record it. And that's good practice for any employer. But we do emphasise that's a requirement for Community Jobs Scotland. So, yeah, I see where Andrew's coming from in the question, but I would say it's no different than any other member of staff. And if you're a good employer, that's what you would be doing. And that's what we should all be aiming for as an employer. That's how we deal with any member of staff.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Michael. This one's from Anne, just wondering how many young people are already in the scheme in Murray. And it might come into yourself, Leland, nicely actually explaining how many young people you've supported to date as well.
I haven't got the figures here, but I can get them for you. And I will get them for you, and I'll forward that to you, Amy. In Murray, we've got a few employers, some national employers, some local employers. Our numbers in Murray haven't been great. I would say more so around the employers, and we've depended on very good organisations, and he's saying, better not hinder me. It won't hinder you because you've got results, Lee. But the more employers engaged, the more young people we can move on.
Yeah. How many is it that you've supported, Lee, just on the top of your head so far?
I think roughly probably 30 odd, maybe 30 plus.
Wow.
Over 10 years. Maybe a wee bit more. Yeah, it's 30 odd, I would say. I might be wrong there, Michael. You'll know more than me.
I'm actually coming off my screen to go on to the Salesforce thing to try and find it. But it would be too much hassle for me. I'm not that very good IT-wise. But no, I'm not surprised at that. And I'm not surprised about the amount of young people that you've supported Outfit Murray, some of the nationals like Action for Children and Bernardo's. And we have in the TSI Murray as well.
And are any of them still with you, Lee, or what's the process?
Yes.
There's some with us, some maybe stayed on and did some volunteering, so they enjoy what they do. We weren't able to employ them and hold on to them. Some have moved on to sustainable employment, some to further education, some maybe not quite in that time. I mean, we're all different. So you'll find that, you know, I think it's probably a key thing for anyone getting involved in it. Don't beat yourself up too much if they don't walk out of, you know, the program and either you employ them or they go into sustainable employment for the rest of their lives. We keep in touch with all our Community Jobs Scotlanders over the years and just check in and see how they're getting on. Most of them are in work one way or another and enjoying it, but for us it's very much about getting people, as Michael said there, it's about getting those skills for sustainable employment, but it's also about the mindset for sustainable employment, knowing to get up and arrive at work at time, you know, and the little things. So yeah, we've got some still on here. Most of our workforce has actually been taken on through schemes like Community Jobs Scotland, Future Job Fund, and other schemes that were in the past, that they've then developed their roles within our organisation, which is quite novel. So it fits nicely.
I remember a while back, sorry, Amy, doing a bit of tracking exercise, and I emailed Lee to say, Lee, what's happening? Your job outcomes aren't that great. And I came back to me like a terrier. And it was people who had since left Reboot who had got other jobs. And that was a few years ago, but I'd love to try and trail that email and trace it, because it was like they had moved on to jobs, and I won't say bigger and better jobs, but you're going, wow, good. So our tracking needs to be a wee bit better. We do it now and again, but to see how many people that had been at Reboot who had succeeded and then who had moved on, but we hadn't tracked it well enough. You had, which was good, and then we followed it up. So no, it was good.
Great.
So in terms of next steps, Michael, if people are wanting to get involved, do they just fill out the online application, or what's the next steps?
Fill in the online application. I'm on leave next week, but I would pick up if anybody had any questions when I'm back. But fill in the online application. It's very straightforward. Even I can do it.
So what I'll do then is I'll put that in an email to you all. I'll send you the presentation slides. I'll send a link for the calculator and working out how much funding you can get at the end of the day. And I'll also attach Michael and Susan's contact details as well, just in case you want to reach out with them and find out any more information. But yeah, I would just like to say thank you very much for all coming along this afternoon and giving your time up to find out more. I'm delighted to have so many from board. But like I say, if they've got any questions, just let us know. And thank you, Susan and Michael, for coming along and presenting as well. And hopefully I look forward to seeing some of you soon. Take care, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.